Yeah, and the pubs are opening soon.
Yeah, I think this weekend's going to be a bit interesting.
I completely agree, and I have no idea what to do now. Welcome to episode 17 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing, the F is for, well, you decide. As you may be asking yourself, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of Rockstar CMO and managing director of @ProPingo, a London-based content marketing agency. You can find us at @propingo.com. Or, well, you might be able to if I pick something easier to spell. Anyway, hello and thank you for joining us. If you're a new listener, welcome and I hope you stick around. If you're a regular here, well, thank you for your support. This episode was recorded on Friday, July the 3rd. The pubs are opening in London tomorrow, a cause for celebration for some. And I suspect when you hear this, the craziness that will no doubt ensue will be making global news. Wherever you are, if you've been to the pub or are planning to, or maybe that's not for you, I hope you're keeping safe and sane. This week, I'm sticking to the script. I'll take a look in the pages of rockstarcmo.com and suggest an article I would like you to take a look at. In the interview segment, I chat to Sally Yates, CMO of UK fintech vendor Acceptor, and I'm again fortunate enough to be joining my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, in the virtual Rockstar CMO bar. Let's get started, shall we? Flicking through the virtual pages of Rockstar CMO this week, I'd very much like you to take a look at one of our contributors, Anonamau5. Named after the DJ Deadmau5, who performs in a mask, he's our anonymous agency insider. I can confirm he's a he, but I will not be drawn on any other details. And his observations are always straight up and on the money. In the last issue, he talks about the obsession he's seen for management teams for hiring consultants and how it can betray an insecurity in a leadership team. I was a little conflicted by this when I first looked at it and it first hit my desk. I've been a consultant and advisor, and I think having an outside-in view from a consultant can be hugely beneficial. I think it's also one of the benefits that you bring as a new employee when you join a company. You still have that kind of outside-in view. You're not institutionalized. And I think that point of view can really help. But what he's really driving at is hiring people that have the skills, knowledge, or insight that you already have in your business. We've been there. You're ushered into the boardroom to listen to a well-paid consultant hired by your management team to tell you stuff that you already know, or maybe even have said yourself. But you have to watch your idiot boss nod along as if these same words being uttered by a prophet. But this article isn't really that. It's not really dinging consultancy culture in its entirety. What he's saying is he's encouraging management teams to look inward for insight, then bring people in to fill the gaps. As he concludes, so listen to your people and do your job. Leave the consultancies to the stuff you truly don't know. I think these are wise words from my anonymous friend. I think we can all agree with that. I will, of course, include a link to the article in the show notes. All right, on with the interview. This week, I'm chatting to Sally Yates, the Chief Marketing Officer at Acceptor, a fintech software house. Sally has successfully led both in-house and agency-side teams to deliver transformational results, working with Fortune 500 companies to early-stage high-growth firms. She is passionate about marketing that makes a difference, and it was my first time chatting to Sally, and I really enjoyed meeting her, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Welcome, Sally, to Rockstar CMO FM.
Thanks very much, Ian. Lovely to be here.
And how are you? How are you coping in lockdown pandemic?
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's, the new normal, isn't it? So it's been a few months now. So I think we're all got some sort of routine. There's a little bit of a Groundhog Day to it, but things are gradually changing and we were allowed to do a little bit more, week by week, take it as it comes.
Yeah, and the pubs are opening soon.
Yeah, I think this weekend's going to be a bit interesting.
I completely agree, and I have no idea what to do myself.
Stay away.
Yeah, and I think listeners can tell from your accent you're in the UK, same as myself, right?
Absolutely.
And you're down there in beautiful Surrey.
That's it, not far from London.
Yeah,
Plenty of green spaces, so lots of opportunity for cycling, walks, and so on. We're
nice,
very lucky.
very nice. I know it very well. So, so Sally, for the listeners that aren't familiar with your work, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I suppose I've made my career in sort of financial services, technology, and software. I've worked both agency side and corporate. With both large, well-established sort of Fortune 500 companies right through to sort of smaller, nimble fintechs. I've also been poacher turned gamekeeper. So I've moved from being a journalist to a PR to a marketer.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose a passion for writing runs through all of that. And being a big writer makes me a big reader, basically anything I can lay my hands on. And I suppose I'm always looking to see how we can do things better and also challenging my team to do things better.
That's splendid. I'm the same. I mean, I know that we're not going to share the video when we publish the podcast, but you can see behind me all my marketing books. I've got another pile over here that I haven't read, and I hate it when anybody recommends a book on LinkedIn or Twitter, and it's somebody I know, and I think, yeah, I've got to buy that. And it's just like I have a compulsion. I don't know about you, but yes, books, fantastic. And tell us a bit about Acceptor. I'm pronouncing that correctly, I think. Right?
Yeah, it is Acceptor, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're a global business. We're in automation software. So if you think sort of data, artificial intelligence, sort of like machine learning, NLP, it's all about no code and sort of like automating complex processes. We're a banking, financial services and insurance specialist with offices in London, New York, Singapore. But basically our software works in any sector. And for that, we tend to partner with the likes of EY and Cognizant, and they bring their sector expertise to that. We've been around a while. We're a high growth business, typically sort of like 40% year on year growth. We've still got big ambitions, and we've got some really great client credentials. So sort of think, Citi, HSBC, Metro Bank, and many more.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because fintech's such a growing space, isn't it? And quite exciting. And you do have those clients. Then when I looked at your product, I was wondering. You answered the question about whether it's something that could be applied for other verticals, but you sort of get known for something, don't you, in a particular vertical, and it's best to stick to it, I guess, isn't it? From that perspective, and right now, I mean, we mentioned just a moment ago about where we are in the pandemic and the pubs opening and stuff, but really from a serious perspective, as a leader within the business and as a marketer, how have you been handling the pandemic? How have you been handling how you work, how you message?
So I suppose first and foremost for us, it's been about the people. It's new for everyone. So I suppose for us as a software business, the pivot of how we're now working was easier for us as a business, but also across the business, it's easier for some of our people than others. Some are in small London flats with no balconies, no outside spaces. They're sharing it with their girlfriends and boyfriends, and so it's who gets the lounge and who gets the bedroom. Mm-hmm. And then there's others that absolutely everyone can have a room, loads of space, no problem at all. There's the logistical bits. I think for our clients, it was a bit like that as well. Some have massive offshore businesses. And so, sort of like continuity there, having sufficient sort of broadband capacity and everything was a real challenge. I think from a sort of, I'll say we're lucky, the teams are pulled together. We have a strong business model. We have a high recurring revenue. We've kept on hiring. So we've had like a really positive message for our people, and that's given them a lot of confidence. I think from a marketing perspective, that's also meant that, our budgets haven't been challenged. So we've been able to continue doing what we're doing. We have a really good MarTech stack. For me, it's all about data and automation. So we've continued with a lot of the campaigns we've been doing. Obviously, we've had to pivot from things like industry events, but that's so we've sort of brought on a new webinar platform to improve the user experience, make it feel more like an event. But like I say, a lot of the campaigns and programs we were already planning, we've been able to continue with and strengthen those and everything.
Right. So, so a good news story really in your industry by the sounds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. We understand the importance, staying front of mind is really, really important, to continue to sort of build that confidence and trust in your business. And we've been able to do that, and we've had the support of the business to do that as well.
Yeah. And what about socially within the organization? A lot of people talking about how particularly the more junior, younger people get a little bit disconnected from the business without going to the office. They don't have the same mentorship. How have you worked through that with your team?
So we have, daily catch-ups. We also have the wider Friday sort of bring your own bottled drinks on Friday afternoon. So we connect with the wider sort of revenue generation team of like sales, account management, partnership team, and everything. So anyone and everyone can turn up. So there's no obligation to turn up and drink a bottle of wine every Friday. But you're welcome. Other groups, they've done sort of like bingo sessions. People have had competitions as to like, who can have the best background, what's the background and everything.
So you've really made an effort then to keep that social bond together then.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, the other thing we've done as well in terms of from a leadership perspective is we've increased the frequency of our company meetings, and we've also made it so it's not just the leadership team that are contributing to that. We've broadened out who's contributing to that, and made sure other people were hearing other voices as well.
Yeah, nice. And I also think knowing a little bit about what you guys are like in London around the financial area come 4:00 on a Friday afternoon, and I'm sure you seem to have perpetuated that continued stereotype of replacing the pub with a Zoom call and a bottle of wine. So that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like people showing off their sort of like different gardens or not, as the case may be.
Nice. Now you're in a really hot space, right? Fintech, especially in London, is crazy. There's a ton of companies out there, but from a marketing perspective, and as you said, you're already very established, but still there must be disruptors looking to you. You've got these great clients, but how do you continually stand out from the noise? How do you stay relevant to your audience?
Well, as I say, I mean, as a fintech, we're well established, but the sort of space we operate in is, as a software business, there are many, many much bigger players than us with much bigger budgets, and so therefore it comes to that sort of remembering that you're actually a challenger brand. And I've seen brands that have wanted to pretend they're more grown up and have been around for a lot longer than they have, and they kind of become a bit of a me too. So for us, it's about standing toe to toe, but taking the same thing but being a bit more interesting. So, for example, earlier this past year, we were at a big financial services event called Cybos. It was in London, first time for 40 years, and this is a huge event. And it's like over 300 exhibitors, and you've got big banks there, big firms, and everything, and everyone wants to do an event. But it's like, how do you get people from the Excel to the centre of town to the more interesting?
Yeah. God, it's not even in London, is it? It doesn't feel like you're in London. You go all that way.
No. So what we did is it was actually when the government was prorogued. So we actually had some branded taxis. We had branded taxis running from the Excel Centre and from Canary Wharf. We took them to a private pier about 7 minutes from the Excel. We had 2 boats, took them down the river with champagne, of course, because we're in banking. And then, small walk across the road to the Houses of Parliament, tours of the Houses of Lords and House of Commons, and then drinks and food in the private members' dining room.
Oh, splendid.
So, that created a lot of buzz, a lot of talk and everything. And so it's doing something really, really well, having that sort of destination venue sort of standout piece that even if you are normally based in London, you'd still want to go to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, how many of us just commute and don't bother looking around once we're there? So that's fantastic. Yeah. And and hopefully one day we'll be back to doing such things, right? So
no, absolutely. I mean, that's what you've got to aim for, haven't you? You know, it might be in a smaller way and everything, but you know, at the end of the day, humans are social beings, and they want that interaction, and we just do it slightly different.
Well, so what inspired you to get into marketing in the first place? We sort of touched a little bit on your history and a little bit before I hit record. So what did marketing chose you, or did you choose marketing from the beginning?
I think for me, the whole thing with marketing is there's many different aspects to it. And so, you know, there is the writing, there is the creativity, there is the business aspect to it. There is the, you know, getting to know your customers and finding those needs. There's lots of different facets to it. But yes, I did go down, you know, I've been at various points in my career. I've done the whole Myers-Briggs and everything to check. And everything. And apparently I should be doing marketing in like a software business.
Splendid. I got this weird result. I'm an introvert that gets their energy from people.
Oh, wow.
So that hasn't really helped in lockdown, right? So that's like,
no.
So on the one hand, I should be perfectly happy with being locked down, but I get my energy from people. So I don't know what to do. But yeah, I can't remember what it was after that. But it's those things are really interesting, aren't they, when you go through them?
You know, they're really interesting. We did a session the other day, and one guy who's an introvert sort of turned around and said, yeah, actually, lockdown's been really difficult for me as an introvert. He said, because I'm constantly on a screen in front of people. I'm finding it really difficult to have my sort of recovery time.
Yeah, I think as well for introverts is because everybody's saying switch to virtual, switch to social media, switch to being more present on LinkedIn. I think those places present a problem if you're an introvert as well, because you don't want to butt into this big conversation that's going on, and you sort of think, well, I'm not Gary Vee and I feel like an idiot and all those sorts of things. So yeah, I think that's probably. I think it's interesting that you'd think that lockdown would be great for introverts, and it really isn't.
No,
and it's terrible for extroverts. So lockdown is just terrible for human beings, then I think. Yeah. So when I was looking through your career on LinkedIn, because you and I haven't spoken before, I saw a lot of references to analyst relationships and influencer marketing, which has been quite a hot topic on Rockstar CMO from time to time. And, obviously last year, sort of bubble burst on B2C influencer marketing and stuff. But I think it's an important part of B2B marketing as a B2B marketer myself. So what are your tips to B2B marketers around that whole topic? Because I think nowadays, right, analyst relations and influencer marketing is kind of squished. They're the same practice, really, aren't they? So what do you think?
So it's interesting because very often when you start, you sort of mention analyst relations and you're talking to other people in the business about it, there's still this perception that it's a pay for play.
My God, yeah.
You have to go and have a subscription. Yeah. And of course, it's far from it. Vendor briefings are actually an essential part of any good analyst's day to day. And a good analyst needs to know who the key players are in their sectors, and they're always changing sectors as well. And you can't expect them to actually know everyone in those sectors. So it's actually your job to get in front of them, make sure that they're constantly hearing from you, and to also understand that they actually have influence right across the buying cycle. Obviously, as marketers, it's the whole buying cycle for us. It's not just the sales cycle. So the analysts are there right at the beginning, creating RFIs, RFPs, building shortlists. But they're also that sort of third-party independent validation, because trust is a huge thing. And it's not just us saying that we're great. There's these other people that really know the market that are saying, we've looked at this independently. We've talked to their customers. We've talked to other people. We've seen the software. We've looked into it, and we're happy to talk it and recommend it.
Yeah, and I guess in financial services, you've probably got quite a conservative buyer, so that kind of trust and credibility is incredibly valuable in selling into that market, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a conservative buyer. It's also a long buying cycle. It's a complex buying matrix. It's very often a C-suite sign-off. So if you're going to put your name behind, say, buying, except that you want to believe that it's a good bet, that your trust is well placed.
Yeah, and I talk about that from time to time because people don't seem to think that B2B buying process or sale is emotional, and I think it is. I think it's incredibly emotional for those buyers. The pressure that's on them in terms of their career, in terms of what their peers think, is way more than, I don't know, if I went and bought a car. Even though a car would be a very expensive purchase at home, what my wife thinks of that is one thing, right? But that whole B2B experience, incredibly emotional.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. People do think, emotional part is a really small part of B2B, but I think I agree. It's a much, much bigger part. Nowadays, people want that affinity with the brand. They want the association. And I think, particularly in our space, like I say, with, automation and AI and everything, it's like, am I getting the right mix, the right part of the future?
Yeah. And especially when you're a challenger brand, because presumably there are much bigger names where an executive could just, like the old, I think it's a 30-year-old expression, isn't it? That nobody gets fired for buying IBM. There's always that in every software category, isn't there? A dominant player that people feel less risky about signing for. How do you deal with that in your space? I mean, you must see that all the time.
Yeah, we do see that. And obviously, again, one of the challenges we have is because of the space we operate in, a lot of people won't actually give you those external client sort of quotes and case studies.
They love reading them, though, don't they? They do. Whenever you're a vendor selling to the market, the potential client wants references. They want to see case studies, and then when you sell it and you say to them, "Can we have a reference for a case study?" They're like, "Oh no."
I know. Yeah, I mean, we haven't lost a client. We have clients that will give, sales references and everything. Nice. We do have, some clients, but we do have, the likes of like Forrester and HFS Research and everything that actually say, we've looked at Acceptor, that they're good at this. This is what they're good for. And likewise, we understand why people are looking at, peer brands. I mean, part of our challenge is, you could be a competitor as well as a partner, as well as a peer, it depends on what sort of day of the week and who you're talking to. So,
and the exact solution. For sure. Yeah, and you actually, Acceptor, you actually have a podcast and a blog. And doing my research, I was listening to your podcast. I was interested in a conversation because data is something that always comes up. So not only do I do this, I host executive dinners sometimes. And when I talk to senior executives in businesses, there's always a number of popular topics like silos and like data. Now, from your perspective, I thought this was a really interesting phrase that came out of the last episode of your podcast, was about data as a corporate asset. Tell us a little bit about that and how you see that, because that's really relevant to us marketers, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, within Acceptor, I'm known for like data being one of my mantras, or hobby horse, as I was accused the other day. And everyone gets that sort of, bad data equals bad decisions, and people get that. But what they're probably not as good at understanding is that it really does all start with the data, and actually everyone's responsible for that data. And what I find is people are very keen to hand off that responsibility to other people. Quite often they're very keen to hand it to marketing departments, particularly those with database administrators. Oh, there we go. You handle the data. And it's like, well, no, if you're the salesperson or you're the account management person and you're the one talking to the client, you're the one that needs to, update that piece of data. We'll update the data where we have those touch points, but it's right across the business, from the support desk to, your finance department and everything. And I suppose it goes back to things like looking at things like Salesforce as an actual CRM, as opposed to a sales tool, or, something that I just put sales data in and everything. And it is always a cultural shift because, people don't find it very exciting, keeping data up to date.
Yes. But they do find but when they're looking for something, they find it very exciting. So I've always had that challenge. I'm not going to draw you on this because I don't want to get you in trouble. But I've always had that challenge where salespeople go into the CRM and they're looking for something, and they're looking for reference. Who's referenceable? Marketing, tell me who's referenceable. Well, you guys in the sales team and the customer services team, you know who's referenceable. So keep the CRM up to date. And then we'd all know.
And could you please ask more people if they were, can we get references of these people? It's like, well, I don't know. Well, have we asked? Let's keep asking. Let's ask in different ways. Let's do a softer ask.
Have you ever tried putting it in the contract?
Yes. Yeah. No, we now have.
I guess redlined, like before you even.
Yes. Again, one of another little challenge that we like to have. Yeah. Don't give it away straight away, please. But for us, it's like the classic articles used to be the press release, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just like I'd rather have a video interview or a case study or something like that, because by the time a press release has gone through 42 iterations in a big corporate, it's not the most interesting read.
No, absolutely. Whereas a 2-minute video, and really all the buyer is looking for is that validity, aren't they? Of here's a credible person representing a credible brand who's saying credible things. It's not going to take them an hour and a half to say that. It's just a minute on video and you're good. Or like the wonderful sort of video case studies, which are these wonderful sweeping views of their headquarters. And there's really, let's get to the point where somebody speaks, 5 minutes in.
Yeah. Well, now it would be a talking head, wouldn't it, on Zoom or something?
Yeah. Well, now you're helping me with my hobby horses. So I'm going to take my time with that. Now, talking about the fact, we are talking on a podcast, and we're only 16 episodes in, so I can't refer to myself as much of a podcasting expert, I guess, but it's something you guys have been doing, and I think it's something that's slowly gaining traction amongst B2B vendors and B2B marketers. What was your experience, and what would you recommend to other people thinking of putting on a corporate podcast?
I think first and foremost, go for it. If you've generally got something to say and you've generally got an angle and you can see a really good theme for a podcast, go for it. But if you generally are struggling to work out what your genre would be or anything, then maybe now is not the time to do it. And I think it's the same with any piece of content, isn't it?
I was going to say the same. You took the words right out of my mouth there. Yeah.
You've got to plan for it. You've got to make it good. It's got to be worth listening to. Otherwise, it's just a really big exercise in producing something that gets buried.
Absolutely. When I was a CMO, I always had this thing where I'd ask why all the time, just drove everybody nuts. Why are we doing that? Why are we producing that? Why? And you got to think about that all the time and think about, well, who the audience is. There's no point in us being on TikTok, right?
No.
You got to know where your audience are and what they're interested in.
I don't know about you. When we launched our podcast, there was, obviously there's traditional places where, people go for their podcast. Well, for our audience, they don't go there. We have a disproportionate number of people listening to the podcast on their PCs at work.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. And going to it through Bing.
Yeah. Bing.
So, oh my gosh. So no, I kid you not, financial services, B2B, because what they don't do is they just don't change their browser when they get a new laptop.
Wow. And there is talk, isn't there, that for certain demographics, advertising on Bing is just it kills compared to anything else. Yeah.
It's one of our best channels. It really is.
Really? I don't think I've even looked at Bing for anything. I'll have to reconsider that, especially if I'm going to sell some fintech software.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously it's a lot more cost effective than Google.
Yeah, absolutely. This is really fascinating. And finally, I wanted to mention to you a feature that we have for Rockstar CMO that you're probably familiar with, that we call the swimming pool, which is our portal to hell for all the bullshit and snake oil that's collected around our industry. And I'm sure you're familiar with a few of those things. And what would you nominate that we chuck into that swimming pool?
So, obviously, bad data. has got to go in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Also, one of my pet hates has always been, I think this comes from the time when I worked in PR, was marketing speak.
Oh,
It's
lovely.
like really weird, sort of Victoriana, long-winded. You know, if I could use 15 words, let's do that. 3 is no good. 15.
Yes.
And then I suppose the other thing is, like, for marketers who only ever want to tell you how well they're doing in, again, terms only marketing people understand, or metrics that marketing people understand. If you can't speak business, then for me.
I'm always a big fan of that. And anybody who listens to what I talk about, I'm always talking about encouraging marketers to speak in the language of the C-suite. So, you know, for my day job, if you like, I'm always talking about awareness, revenue, and trust. And marketing is about that. And if you don't think about those things, you're going to get replaced by a chief growth officer, right? Because suddenly we've got this new role rising, and people that are listening to this podcast and have listened to it before will already know this rant. But, you know, if you're a CMO that doesn't focus on those things, and talks in the mealy words that the C-suite doesn't understand, then they're going to find some guy or gal that calls himself a chief growth officer and goes, I think that's what I need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me air some of my hobby horses. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much.
Thanks ever so much. I really appreciate your time, definitely.
Bye. Thank you, Sally. I will, of course, be sharing all the links that we've referred to, plus Sally's contact details in the show notes at rockstarcmo.com/podcast. I don't know about you, but I've had a long week. I can't complain about it, as I have some lovely clients, but it's definitely time for a cocktail. And as the real bars are still on lockdown, it's time to ease into the weekend in our virtual Rockstar CMO bar with my friend Robert Rose. See what he's drinking and what thought he will leave us with this week. You know he can play piano, right? Good evening, Robert. Good to see you. What are you drinking?
Oh, it's good to see you too, my friend. So this is a fun one. We have a fun drink this week. So when I was a kid, my dad used to make a drink every Sunday evening. And it's a well-known cocktail in the world of bars. It's called a salty dog. And you may be familiar with it because, of course, it's the main component of it is gin. This is my take on the salty dog because, of course, I mostly drink tequila.
Yes.
And so I call this the perro callejero, which translates roughly in Spanish to street dog.
Wow.
Which is how I typically will introduce myself. I am a dog of the street. So it's how I got my education. It is basically how I grew up. So the idea here is that it's not gin. In this case, it will be tequila, which then is mixed with grapefruit juice, a little salt, and then a salted rim on the glass, and 2 jalapenos to put in there. Now, some of your more passionate cocktail listeners out there might say, well, that's a Paloma. It is a Paloma. Usually a Paloma doesn't have the jalapenos in there, and it's my drink, so shut up.
My rules, my bar.
Yeah, that's right.
I like that. All right, so you've decided not to use gin. Let me see what I've got here. Oh,
yeah.
I have, yes. So this week, you'll be pleased now, I don't have Hendrix. I have Bombay Sapphire. So I have him. So, and also possibly because I probably can't pronounce the name of the drink that you just made, it's probably better that I stick to the English version anyway. So let's have a look at. So I've got some gin. Let's stick ice. Did you put ice in it?
There is ice in this, yes.
Splendid. Let's a bit of ice. Some nice measure of gin. And then what was it? What else did you put into that?
There was some jalapenos in there as well, which I'm in London. I'm assuming you're probably not going to find many of those.
Well, not on my desk. No. If I was to muddle them with the other ingredients, would that taste anything like tonic?
It might. It might.
Jolly
It might.
I have tonic. Good. All right, let's give this a go. Oh, that is nice. That's very nice, Robert. And what did you say it was called?
That is I'm calling it the perro callejero.
Oh man, I could
roughly translates to street dog.
Yeah, I could listen to you say street dog in Spanish. Yeah. You've definitely got the accent there. And what better way to be called a street dog?
What's that?
What better way to be called a street dog? If any?
Well, exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be called a street dog, you might as well do it with one of these in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very nice. Thank you very much. Now, so a couple of old street dogs like ourselves, where are we hanging out to drink this one?
Well, I've got a great place this week we should go, which is, and of course, for your listeners, they may or may not know that I grew up in Texas.
Right.
And there are
Cowboys.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And so, I would take us to the hill country of Austin, which is just outside of Austin. And there's some beautiful places there to sit in a lake. And what I would do is I would find us the scrappiest little Mexican food place on a lake somewhere in the hill country of Austin, and we would have some great Mexican food and drink about 5 or 6 of these.
Sounds splendid. That sounds absolutely splendid. I've actually been to Austin. I used to work for Vignette, who are based in Austin, and my day year was made. And I don't know how appropriate this story is because I got called a gringo. And growing up in the UK and seeing all the cowboy films and actually somebody calling me that, I was absolutely delighted. I don't think it was meant as a term of affection, but I think that was I was pretty much a salty dog that day. So if I've offended anybody by saying that I got delighted by being called that, I apologise. But English boy wandering around Austin, finding his way around for the first time, and suddenly finding yourself starring in your own little cowboy film was quite fun.
Well, that happens a lot in Texas. Yeah, you can find yourself starring in any number of cowboy films as you're traversing the Texas countryside.
Yeah, and also I understand that Austin isn't really Texas, is it? It's
that is correct.
Yeah.
There is a dome that has emerged that Austin is its own personality for sure. Yeah. And Texas has changed quite a bit in the intervening years since I left. I think it's all because I left, basically. But,
they just thought they better sort their house out while you were gone. The salty dog's out. Well, it sounds like a great location, and I would happily drink a few of those up in those hills. But while we're sipping away, what thought would I be left with as I try and find my way back to the city?
There's something that I've been exploring a lot of late, and it comes out of my work with as many of the investment, sort of institutional investment companies that I've been doing work with, and there is a new standard of measurement, and you've been hearing, certainly aside from the obvious news that has been of late, this was something that was happening on the investment side of the world, which is looking at new ways to measure the success or potential success of companies, which is ESG. They call it ESG for short, which is environmental, social, and governance, which is looking at companies based on their good citizenship, ostensibly, right? Which is, are they a good corporate citizen? Do they have transparent governance? Are they doing good things for the environment? And are they doing good things by their employees and partners and vendors?
Wow.
And they're grading companies on this because they're drawing some correlation between financial success and the, metrics of ESG. And I have to start to think that we in marketing, especially in promotional marketing, will start to be graded on some of these things as well. It just has to trickle down as this becomes a more popular way of assessing stock price and investment dollars.
Yeah.
And so that is starting to become something really interesting to me of what does marketing look like when measurement evolves from simply something, how much revenue can we drive for how little money do we spend to do that, into something more interesting, which is how do we help the company become a better corporate world citizen. And that's an interesting shift in marketing metrics that I think if we can get a handle on now, we'll be ahead of the game.
And I've often had this thought as well, is that if you pool the amount of money we all spend on advertising and marketing, and if just a small percentage of that was put to good, and okay, maybe it'll raise some metric within our company that we're doing good, that would be amazing.
Yeah, exactly right. It is something that will, I think, permanently change the way that we look at marketing. And if this and I think, even given the world events right now, I think that's a change that may be accelerated based on what's happening right now.
And it's also a reaction against what a lot of people have seen right now, isn't it? It's the fake empathy, the woke washing, and all that, and the brand purpose bollocks, right? It's a proper way of measuring then that. And who's doing that? Is that who are the arbiters of it? Who's doing the measurement? How does that work?
It's and funny enough, it's spreading much faster in Europe than it is here in the States. That is not uncommon, of course, where Europe and is much further ahead than in most things in the U.S. these days. I'm going to have to accept the UK out of that, of course, my friend, because, the UK is doing equally stupid things these days. But aside from that,
about any
aside from the politics
I think from the liberal nature of our societies, I certainly would agree with you on that.
Something like that, yes. Anyway, the real key here is that the ESG grades are being built, really custom built by many of these investment firms. But the biggest investment firms on the planet are really doing this, from Goldman Sachs to BlackRock to Schwab to even some of the larger European companies. They're all starting to build ESG portfolios that are outperforming the market. And so they're all assembling their own sort of metrics to it, but it all has some combination of, good corporate citizenship, their attention to purpose, which has, of course, become a big deal in brand, and then their alignment with governance and transparency in the way that they manage data, the way that they manage security, the way they manage corporate finance, and transparency there, and then, of course, their treatment of employees and vendors and all of that. It's a fascinating field.
Yeah, really interesting, because it's also, of course, investors are attracted to something that shows that a stock is going to go up. But I think that's going to be great for employees to have a look at where they should work and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's going to be a really interesting thing as these companies begin to reap the benefits of investment, from their stock perspective as well as from a venture perspective, how they'll start to shift strategies on, what becomes the priority. It used to, of course, be the two things that the C-suite cared about were revenue and cost. Those things are not going to be number one and number two anymore. There certainly will be there, but as we start looking at ESG and other types of programs that look at companies from a new purpose-driven standpoint, I think we're going to see a lot of opportunity to shift everything that we're doing in marketing.
Yeah, and one of the things I think we've probably talked about is certainly one of the things that I talk about when I talk about the role of the CMO is getting aligned with what the C-suite care about. And if the C-suite are going to care about these things, absolutely, to your point, we need to get ahead of that.
Yeah.
No, very interesting. Always very interesting when we share a couple of cocktails. Well, that's regardless of where we are. So that was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And when people spin the dial of the old interwebs, where will they find you, my friend?
Well, thank you very much for asking that. You can find me at my little home, my little company on the web, which is TCA, the Content Advisory, which you can get to by simply going to contentadvisory.net. Or I would love to chat with anybody on social. I'm on the Twitter and on the LinkedIn, on both, and I'm really easy to find on both of those. If you just do a quick search.
You're Robert_Rose and avoid the other one. All right, well, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next week down in the bar.
Absolutely. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye. Thank you, Robert. And aside from indulging me on this podcast, Robert hosts two of my favourite podcasts, This Old Marketing with his pal Joe Polizzi, and The Weekly Wrap, both easy to find on all good podcasting platforms, and some rubbish ones too. All right, then, that's it, the end of episode 17, and thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track, and jiving along with us. Thanks again to Robert, to Sally, and to our wonderful Rockstar CMO contributing community, and to you for listening. I must also mention Dennis Shao, regular contributor here and friend of the show, who on Twitter rather wonderfully last week offered to start a crowdfund to improve my liquor collection. I don't really know what he means, but yes, please, send more gin. Anyway, thank you, Dennis. When she was young and I tried to explain Twitter, my youngest daughter once described my social media strategy as, "You are just shouting into the void, Daddy." So I'd love to get your feedback so I can gain some respect from the junior Gary V at our dining table. You can find us at rockstarcmo.com or at rockstarcmo on Twitter and LinkedIn, or drop us a like or a review in your preferred podcasting platform. Next week, I'm hoping to chat to Jasmine Martirosian, VP Marketing at Tufsud Americas. I'm hoping I'm saying some of that right. She's a long-standing member of our Rockstar CMO community, but we only know each other at social media and email distance, so I'm looking forward to chatting to her. Until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of rockstarcmo.com, and I look forward to sharing our little show with you next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.